I'd like to begin this particular lesson a little bit out of the ordinary, straying a little bit from the traditional mode of how I've been teaching. Basically what I'd like to do is I'd like to start out with a story. It was 1939 on the eve of World War II. There were 33 men who boarded a submarine, and they went out into the chilly waters just off the east coast of the United States of America. You have to realize that around that time to go onto a submarine was a risky maneuver. Because if that submarine ever hit the bottom of the ocean, took in water into the submarine, and was unable to get back to the surface, the prevailing concept at that time was that it was sure death. Basically, there was just no way to get a person that was deep down under the water back up to the surface if they were encased inside a submarine that was sealed tight so no water could get in. In fact, previous to that particular submarine, which was called the Squalus, an event had occurred. The submarine went off the coast. Basically, it took in water because of a leak. It went down to the bottom. And the men there that were trapped inside the submarine tried to open the hatch. But you have to realize, before you go down, they tighten the hatch so tight that there's no way to open it. And so despite their best efforts, even though this particular submarine was only about 100 feet underneath the water, they were unable to save the men, and regrettably all of the men died. So here we are in 1939, 33 men on a submarine. They're going down. They go beneath the water about 28 feet. They check the lights, the lieutenants, and everything's green, meaning everything's A-OK. There's not a single red light. A red light would mean that there's a warning, possibly that water is coming into the submarine. They descend further to 30 feet, to 35 feet. You have one gentleman, he's on periscope number 1. You know the periscope, it's basically that little thing that comes out at the top of the submarine so that you can see. And everything's looking good, and then something happens. For some unknown reason, water starts to pour into the submarine like a fire hydrant. Every man on board was in shock, and they raced to do whatever they could to close off the hatches where the water was coming in. Of course, you have to realize as you're closing off the hatches, you have to make sure there's no men in the hatches where the water's coming in. And so you had one gentleman who had the agonizing task of closing these hatches and trying to make sure the gentleman could escape, because it would have burned in his heart of agony, full of regret for the rest of his life, had he closed the door on a pleading man who was trying to save his own life. Eventually, the submarine went all the way down to 243 feet beneath the water. The temperature of the water was just above freezing, and there they sat in silence. It was as if they didn't exist on the earth. There was a gentleman, his name was Momsen, and although the prevailing thought around the world was that you couldn't save a man that was down in the submarine, he thought differently. And he actually came up with a way to create this about a 10-foot high bell that could descend and rescue the men. And it happened. The men were saved and brought up from 243 feet underwater to the top. It was an amazing rescue effort. Okay, so you're asking yourself, why are you telling me this story? Isn't this on technology lesson plan writing? It is, but again, I want to remind you, I hope you watched that very beginning video in lesson 1 that was in the reading portion, where Dr. Darlene Opfer from the RAND Corporation talked about the 9 points for bringing in 21st century technology skills into our classrooms. And the very first point was making things relevant to the students. Students just don't understand exactly why things are relevant. For instance, just think for a moment. E equals mc squared. Where in your daily life today, on a Friday, say, have you seen E equals mc squared? Think about it. Where has that formula actually been seen by you today or in this last year? Well, when we think about it, it's like, well, probably never at all. Well, actually, if you've ever seen a car wreck, you've seen E equals mc squared. But you know, the students don't know that. They don't know that some of the things that they're learning, they can apply today. And so I tell you that story just to let you know that as we go through these technology lesson plan writings, stories, scenarios, and context are going to be huge. Now let's revisit that story. Okay, there are several facts. What was the date? Well, it was 1939. What was the name of the submarine? The name of the submarine was called Squalus. How far underneath the water did it go? It was 243 feet underneath the water. How many men were on it? There were 33. What would you do if you were one of those 33 men in the submarine? Number one, that's a challenge. You could create an entire project on that. Find a way to escape from the submarine. Your conventional knowledge says it can't be done. But you know what? That's what this course is all about. It's challenging the conventional knowledge and unlocking the innovative capability in our students. Number two, let's say you're on the shore. How could you grab those men and rescue them? That's a whole nother project. So a starting point for understanding how to incorporate technology into a lesson plan is really getting a situation of relevance. And so the objective of this lesson is find a real-life scenario, event, story, or situation that will provide a meaningful context for your students. Step one, give the students a project or challenge to solve. There's a spelling error there. Step two, help them understand how to approach the problem, but allow them to develop a habit of being challenged, persevering in the face of difficulty, working with others, and finding solutions. Okay, that last slide was a leftover slide. Go ahead and ignore that. Anyway, I want to encourage you as you do the reading portion to start thinking of the value of bringing in real contextual stories that are relevant to the students into your classroom. Whether you're a history major and you teach history, whether you're math teacher, bringing these real life stories in will really help you out. And when you tell a story, really outline the facts. There's something about being able to say the date, the numbers, the depth that the submarine went to, and then articulating a particular challenge that you want them to think through. It's inspiring. And in lesson 14, I'll tell you another inspiring story. Thank you.